I love
Thank
your
you.
hairdo. Very beautiful. I'm realizing now that Yolanda, it was my fault. Yolanda, can you hear me now?
I can.
Yeah.
Okay. I realized it was my fault that you couldn't hear me before. It wasn't yours. Yay. Okay. We are actually live now. So
Okay.
we are already live.
Hey, everybody.
Hey everybody. This is whosoever will. And Miss Keisha, I know Yolanda, we did not talk about Instagram. So I know you're like, Insta what? As far as, because it's a totally different device we get on for
Right.
Instagram. So let me do that right quick, and then okay. All right, and no. What is your Instagram name again, Miss Keisha?
Billy, Billie, second class.
Okay, there you are. Okay, all right. I just sent you an invite there, and now I'm going to log into Facebook and share this screen with a bunch of other folks. Do you see your Instagram invite?
Who, me?
Yes, ma'am. Keisha, do you see
I
it?
hit it. It's taking a minute to connect, but
Okay.
it should connect in a
Let
second.
me know and I'll resend it to you if you don't see it. There
Is
you
it?
are. I see that you waved at me, but you're not on the screen yet.
Let's try it again. Hold on.
Okay. I see that you waved
What?
at me, but you're not on the screen. Nope. All right.
Well, I had to send you a request
Okay,
to join.
I see
There
it.
we go.
I'm trying
Let
this
me
on a
pull it
different device. It's like I have to have 20 different devices. Okay, somebody needs to turn their volume down. It's not Yolanda because she only has one device. All right, there you
up.
go.
Okay.
You're good.
You good? I can't hear you on the StreamYard, but
Yeah, as long as you can hear me on one of the devices, that's fine.
I need to hear you on StreamYard because you told me to turn this one down. So, hold on.
Okay. If you can
Okay.
listen to me on StreamYard, that's the best option.
Say it again.
The best option is for you to be able to listen to me on StreamYard. Can you hear me?
One more time.
Testing 1 2 3. Testing. No. Testing 1 2 3. Testing.
Mm,
No.
I don't know why I can't hear you when you're talking. I can
You
hear the
can't hear me.
background, but I can't hear you when you're talking. Like when you start talking, it cuts out.
So can you hear me? So try Instagram. See if you can hear me on
But I mean,
Instagram.
I can slightly hear you on Instagram. We can make it work.
Okay, we'll make it work. Um, right. Let me share this on one other page. All right. Thank you all for your patience. Um, we're getting it together with our technology. Okay, so hi, my name is Joy Johnson. I love you, I miss you, and it is good to see you. We are doing another show with Whosoever Will, and this is the regular monthly show with Keisha and myself, and we have a special guest, Miss Yolanda, and we are continuing our conversation. This is Making the Distinctions is the name of the show, but we're continuing our conversation on police brutality right now. Miss Keisha, can you still hear me? Okay,
Somewhat. We making it work
somewhat.
over here. I'll be playing with it. If I do something, just tell me. But
Okay,
I'm gonna
okay,
try to hear.
okay,
So I'm gonna make it
okay.
work.
All right. So we're continuing our discussion on police brutality because we're realizing that it's something that really just doesn't get answered in 1 hour of 1 month. So we're going to chip away at it and hopefully we'll make a lot of progress. We ended last month on a very interesting space, if you ask me, because we started to read a gentleman's article in reference to police brutality. So we're going to pick up in that space. But before we do, I want to introduce you all to Miss Yolanda. Miss Yolanda and I, she's one of my oldest friends. We have known each other. She was in the 10th grade and I was in the ninth grade. And I thought she was the most beautiful person I'd ever seen. And I still do think she's that. But she's been a friend of mine, a dear friend of mine for a very, very long time. And she's also a retired police officer. So I believe, in addition to being a woman of God who loves the Lord with all of her heart, mind, soul. She is her profession. Because you were in the military initially, weren't you, Yolanda? Yeah. And then she joined the police force. So I believe she has a very important perspective. I don't think we should, Whosoever Will is not about um, thinking I know anything or Keisha knows everything or that kind of thing. It's about the body of Christ coming together. So as we grow, our goal is to bring in multiple perspectives and have conversations. We're just having those conversations without the animosity, without the competition, and all that kind of stuff that has a tendency to go along with a lot of political stuff. So, Miss Yolanda, would you introduce yourself to everybody, even though I've kind of introduced you, so that they could get to know you a little bit and because see, I'll brag on you, and I'm trying not to do that. Go ahead, you do it.
It's kind of hard not to brag on it, though. I mean,
Okay, my name's Amanda, and I was a police officer with the security police K9 with the Air Force for about 7 years. I trained dogs for 4 or 5 years, and then I also did security K9 police work as well. And then I took a year off, and then I joined the police department, and I was a part of the police department in the local city that I live in for about 20 years. Well, 20 years total, and I'm a retired officer now. So,
Gotcha.
yeah, and Joy, my beautiful friend Joy, I just want to tell you guys that she looks the same as she did when she was still got that baby face. She still has she was this faithful when she was 14 years old. She was this mighty when she was 14 years old, and she has stayed the course. And I'm so proud of what you're doing here, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
Thank
And
you
I
so
love
much.
Miss Keisha too. We've had a couple of long conversations about what's going on. And so I understand that this is a very sensitive topic for her specifically and her family because she was done unjustly. And I understand it's also a sensitive topic for our community and our country. So it's very important that we have this conversation, and I'm glad to be a part of it, even though you had to beg me several times to get on.
Yeah, I had the romance. Miss Keisha, by the way, I don't. I just realized if you can't hear on Streamyard, then you can't hear Miss Yolanda.
no,
So,
it's really weird because I can hear you here, but I hear Miss Yolanda here.
well, right now, if you can hear, I'm happy. Let's just leave it
I
at
can
that.
hear
But
everybody. Let's just put it
okay,
like
as
that.
long as you can
Now,
hear everybody, I'm
y'all
not
sound like
complaining.
y'all everywhere, but I can hear y'all. So.
But yeah,
It says the audio is not working on Instagram though.
okay. But while Miss Keisha tries to get her audio to work,
No, it says no
yeah,
audio for Miss Yolanda on Instagram.
it says there's no audio for Miss Yolanda.
They can't.
Yes,
They can't hear
yeah,
Miss Yolanda.
TJ, I'm sorry about the fact there's no TJ, can you hear us? No, he says for Miss Yolanda. No, there is no audio for Miss Yolanda. We did not require her to get on Instagram because we didn't want to overwhelm her with
Yeah,
too much technology.
I got told off this weekend because I turned my phone off when I was on a plane flying back
Okay.
home. The whole family got upset because I didn't put my phone on airplane mode. I'm like, I don't know that.
So yeah, so Instagram followers, I do apologize for the inconvenience. I'm trying to slowly bring my team up to the fact that they're multifaceted when it comes to watching things. So I do, but if you really want to listen to, yes, TJ says bummer, Yolanda, because he really wants to listen to your perspective. So maybe we could talk her into doing multiple streams next month because she's got a lot of insight. But I will try to repeat for my Instagram followers what Miss Yolanda says on StreamYard so that you all have at least a little bit of it. But yeah, it's taken a minute for us all to get smart when it comes to technology. So but as we go ahead and go forward with the conversation, I want to you all already know Miss Keisha because she's been with us on every show, but I don't want to um, belittle the anointing that I believe is on this woman of God's life for not only this particular conversation, but for whosoever will in general. So, what do you want to say, Miss Keisha?
Time out real quick. Are we also on YouTube as well?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, YouTube
All right,
is strict.
so
Yeah.
it says you can. I'm trying. They asked where
Oh,
else
so
they
where
can
should you
listen.
go to listen? Oh, okay.
On
I
Facebook
can
or
I can
YouTube.
link. Let me see. I can take the YouTube link. It's let's see. You can go to Facebook or YouTube. I will put it in the chat. Hold on here for my Instagram folks. Um, let's see. YouTube is. Let's see. Search for whosoever will. Okay, so that's YouTube. And on Facebook, you can go to FBME. These are all things I need to work on in the future, you guys. So ever.
Yeah, I think we can probably start to set a bulletin. I think on YouTube.
Yeah,
So
these are
a
things that will make it
bulletin would
easier for
maybe.
people to find us. Um, so I will definitely improve my communication. So those are two ways right there. Hopefully, if you all want to listen to Miss Yolanda, that you can go to either YouTube or the Facebook front page, and you'll see her. She's right here on the screen with the rest of us. So okay, so let's go ahead and get. Oh, Miss Keisha, you were about. I was giving you a moment to tell us how wonderful you are. Go on and tell us.
No, no,
Yeah.
no.
Well, I
Y'all
think
know
I.
I can't do introductions, but hey, y'all know who I am by now.
Yeah.
I
Well,
hope.
yes. This is the main show that we have with Keisha, and her anointing, in my personal opinion, is one of loving but straight talk at the same time. Giving us things from a very practical, applicable point of view, and being able to say it in a way that's not all super religious, but helps for people to really embrace what it is that she's saying and receive it. So I'm very glad that she is a part of this, and we're doing. And I'll talk about it some more. But Miss Keisha is not finished. There's another show that we're working on, a podcast that she's going to be doing with whosoever will, and that's going to be coming out real soon. So I'm excited about it. Okay, so let's get started with this particular show, Making Distinctions and Police Brutality. All right, so um, that was a little intro. We totally missed that one. So Let's go ahead and go. Is racism a factor in police brutality? If so, how much of a factor? Miss Yolanda, I mean, not Miss Keisha, you've already answered that question. So why don't we let Miss Yolanda chime in what she feels about it from her perspective?
What do I think about it? I think
Yes.
absolutely. Yeah, I do. But
Hmm.
it's only because our country it's embedded in everything in our country. So if you look at the banking system, there's racism. If you look at the school system, there's racism. If you look at justice system, there's racism. So it's embedded in everything we do. And as a police officer, you could see that there are certain groups of people who hung around certain groups of people. And so, and they had different ways of looking at the community that they worked in than, say, people who lived in the community. I lived in the community that I worked in. And so I can see myself in the area that I work in. Now, somebody else who lives in north of here in a nice home, they might look at our community a different way. And so I wouldn't say it's all racism, no, but there is a component of racism too. So, but like I said, it's within everything. It's embedded in America. It's there's no way around it. And we could pretend like racism isn't a factor, but all you have to do is step outside of this country and look back and see what other countries see when they see us, and you'll know it's here. So we can pretend like there's not racism, but it's within everything that we do in this country.
Yeah.
So of course
Yeah.
there's racism in police brutality because you
Yeah.
can see through when officers pull up to uh, African American, if they believe there's a gun involved, you can see that the shooting will take place almost immediately if they respond as far as how they react to the person that they believe has a gun. And if they have a non melanated person with a gun, they'll try to talk to them but I can't. This is not something that I dealt with. I didn't personally have biases towards people because of their race. But you can see it within the police department. You can see it as an officer working there that we were segregated.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
So what I hear you saying is that yes, we can deal with police brutality as much as we can, but as long as racism is embedded in our culture as a whole, and we can't change the mindsets of the very basic, mindset of racism, then it's just kind of something we have to deal with and work around in general. Would that be a fair summary of what you would say?
yes, that was very well said. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So let's go to the next screen. This is an article written by Jeff Hood, and it's found in Pathos. And Mr. Hood brings up a very interesting topic, and this is the reason why it is my belief, my hope, my prayer that as Whosoever Will grows, we get people of all different races and walks of life to come in and have a conversation about things. Um, because despite what we each think, we do have a perspective. And when you have a conversation, you're able to expand your perspective. And if we make the love of God our foundation, and when we have our conversations, then it's easier for us to expand our perspectives. So, but right now we're still getting started. So right now we use articles instead of the real life people. But this is an article by Mr. Jeff Hood, and he made some interesting comments, and I quoted a few of them in here. But he's talking about the assassination of white folk, the case of Richard Lee Richards. So we're going to read a couple of the quotes out of this article. This one says, though the response in Tuscan, and basically this, let me give you a little bit of prequel. This is an article about a gentleman who was in a wheelchair who got shot by the police, shot and killed by the police. They suspected him of shoplifting, but he didn't have a weapon, and he wasn't running, and he didn't have a taser. He was wheeling himself away, and the officer just shot him dead. And they have a video of him doing it. And he was disrespectful, but I personally don't think that warrants a death sentence. But uh, this was based on what happened with this gentleman. Um, this is how Mr. Hood came up with these following statements. Though the response in Tuscan has been meaningful, the officer was fired. A diversity of civil city officials expressed their collective outrage, and the case was referred to the district attorney's office for potential prosecution, which is unquestionably due to the work of the movement. The response from our wider society, however, has been limited in comparison to other significant instances of police brutality committed against black folk. Few hashtags, few protests, and limited media coverage. And Mr. Hood is saying, why? Why is it that you get the hashtags and the protests for minorities, but you don't get all the hashtags and the protests for this particular gentleman whose name, what was his name? I don't want to say gentleman, Richard Lee Richards.
Richard Lee Richards.
So, and then he goes on to say, recently someone asked me why I couldn't get more white people to be involved in the movement against police brutality. After some thought, I replied that white folk don't think that the movement cares enough about white victims of police brutality, and that is a space of much needed growth. I had no idea that the assassination of Richard Lee Richards would so brutally prove my point. And then he goes on to say here, imagine, what if Richard Lee Richards was black? There'd be marches and protests and extensive coverage, constant replays of the video footage, hashtags, post after post, famous attorneys, on and on. We'd have seen it all play out over and over and over again. Unfortunately, Richards is not black, and his assassination will do little to move the national movement forward. Not because it isn't heinous, but because he isn't black. So, Miss Keisha, will you replay for us what you said about Mr. Hood's comments, and then we will see what Miss Yolanda has to say about it.
So with this particular story, there's a couple of different things that I do want to point out that are important. One, Richard Lee Richards was white, but Richard Lee Richards was also homeless. Um, there's a couple different issues in police brutality, but in humans in general, as far as humans tend to decide who's worth what. There are times when members of the white society, especially members that the white society has put over there with us, are treated that way. And you also cannot expect people to bite the hand that feeds them. So you got grocery store full of people with this man who's probably harassed them before. If he's homeless and he's in his grocery store and he feels comfortable shoplifting, means he's been there before, which means that he's no longer one of them. He's one of us. Whole different issue, but I mean, it's the same concept. It's just the person who's writing it wants to make it a race thing. They're not going to see that as a race thing. They're going to see that as a one-time thing. That is not enough for them to turn on their police. And then the comment as far as white people don't think police care about them killing white people. Well, of course they don't, because they try not to do that. And another thing, the police officer in this particular case was immediately fired versus us having to see when they kill black people so many different times. The case is not the same. We don't have too many homeless black people who is causing a disturbance getting murdered in the streets. The problems that we have and what we are protesting is we're protesting against the one that you were so scared of that when he went to move to do what you told him to do, you were so terrified that you shot him on accident. And then we were all supposed to accept that it was an accident. No, that's a problem. So with that particular article, it goes back to maybe the question before that Miss Yolanda had answered, as far as racism being a thing. Until we stop, how do you say this? Until we stop BSing around racism, everybody wants to tiptoe around it and say, okay, we're gonna have a what is that called? Inclusivity this, and um we're gonna have meetings and team talks about how to diversify. And no, let's talk about what it is. You don't like black people. Let's talk about it. This is why. This is how we can tell. And guess what? Not only do you not like black people, okay, take some accountability for it. And if you really want to fix it, then let's talk about it so that we can figure this out. It's the same thing with people accepting Christ. There is a change that comes about you when you start to put forth the effort to make the change. But as long as we keep trying to cover up the fact that it's a problem, because it is, and it's called racism, it's not called diversity training or any of that. No, it is what it is. Y'all don't like us. Let's talk about it. It's okay. I'm not afraid of you, but let's talk about this so that we can all move on and move forward. I'm not asking you to like us, but we do need to make sure that we are all seeing each other as humans. Eventually, seeing each other with the love of God is the goal, because that's the goal, if that makes sense. Um, so the layers of racism that, like she said, have built the country, until them folks is ready to say, hey, y'all know what? Yeah, they messed up back then, and we need to fix this, and this is a thing. But they won't name it. They won't say racism is a thing, no matter how clear it is to everyone. And I mean, in society, we're just so used to looking at unclear things, clear things, and letting people tell us, yeah, this is not that, but we can see it's that. Yeah, but it's not. But we can clearly see it's that. But it's not, though. We need y'all to just admit that it's not. And so then we get into this whole, well, we all know it's a race issue, but nobody's going to say it's a race issue. So we're going to be stuck in that cycle. So the person who wrote that article, them themselves need to come in and learn about the racism that he put forth in that article. Like, the article is undertoned with racism that I'm sure he's not aware is there. You know what I mean? Because even in the article written yourself, you wrote it one-sided. You didn't feel the need to do the research to write the article, and therefore you talk from only your perspective, which is not the right way to read or write an article in the first place. So when you're talking about something that big and you show how one-sided you are, what happens is now there's a lot of other people who feel comfortable being one-sided with you. Well, the white people don't, with the police, that nobody does anything when white people get assassinated, because y'all don't get assassinated. Stop playing. Stop that. Stop that. I'm sorry. I get there. But I mean, those types of things, they kind of need to be directly dealt with for exactly what they are. And so we as a society can't say things like racism, or we can't even say the bare minimum things. Like, I can't look at a police officer and say, come on, let's keep it real. You don't like me because I'm not even, you don't like me. You're a little bit nervous about my presence. Let's just admit that little bitty part. You know what I mean? Because they first have to be able to see the tiny things. I've got friends where I would tell them, like, okay, you like me, but if I bring all my kids in here and I'm not here, are you going to be nervous? Are you going to feel away? Do you feel away when you have to deal with us in our everyday lives? And why is that? So that we can talk about those things. I don't call it racism as much as sometimes it's, you have to know cultural differences. It's very important. And in the police force, not knowing cultural differences is huge. If you don't know our culture, you cannot police us, because you might not understand that our culture is loud and boisterous a lot. That does not mean that we shoot bullets with our mouths. It means that we get loud and we're passionate, and that's how we talk. And it doesn't mean that you should get scared and be quick to draw a gun. It means you should listen, listen to how we talk, take the context clues, but there's no cultural education there. You know what I mean? And that needs to be a thing. And we can't deal with the racism and police brutality issue until we can get people who know us. A lot of this the racism that comes from the police is, if you don't know black people, you don't deal with black people ever, you don't have no black people in your family, you don't have no contact with black people, and then we put you in the middle of a black neighborhood and tell you you're the authority. How does that work? And why? Who thinks that this model can work? I mean, those are just some of the issues that I see with that particular article. Is his one-sidedness and his trying to come up with a reason why, again, that we shouldn't be upset. You're trying to discredit that with one case, and we can give you 20 to your one case. You might be able to dig up one more, and I bet you that one more is going to be someone in your collective. As white people, I do understand that culture as well. I'm very close to that culture, and I know there's people in that culture that y'all treat just like us, and y'all don't talk about them either, and y'all don't acknowledge them either. And those that say the blue line and blue lives matter and say all of that are the same ones that don't acknowledge that part of your culture either. There's a whole part of their culture they don't acknowledge. So, on that particular
Um,
article.
well, I'm about to have Miss Yolanda give us her perspective on it, but I want to interject one thing um, in the conversation just for our listeners who are listening. There is a distinction, and because I'm gonna bring up a couple of examples, and so I need to make the distinction first. There's a difference between prejudice and racism, and there's a difference between racism and systemic racism.
Yes.
And the reason why this is an important distinction is because what people will do, and I'm gonna bring up a couple examples in a minute, is they'll point out a black police officer who kills black people, or they will point out um, a black police officer who has done something that has been abusive or whatever to black people. And there was a news or something recently in the news about a black female officer who got killed um, in her home or something. You all would probably have more information. I meant to do research for tonight, but I didn't get to it. Um, but and the reason why I'm saying I want to just kind of interject that definition into this conversation is because a lot of times what happens is when we talk about racism, people go into an individual thing. Well, I'm not racist. Okay. Um, we're talking about systemic racism and how that system has affected particular groups of people. Um, and systemic issues as a result of it. Um, to me, I'm trying to think of a parallel, but you could say something to the fact of, well, I um, make sure everyone in my house is fed. Well, we're talking about global hunger, not not whether or not everyone in your house is fed. So it's kind of coming out of your own. Well, I haven't sinned. Well, congratulations for not sinning. But this is about something bigger than just you or what you do. So I just wanted to kind of put that in there for listeners who may have a tendency to go into their own, well, I know I'm not doing that type of mindset, where whosoever will is about coming out of your comfort zone and your world and what's good for you to say, what works for other people? Maybe I should think about that. But before Miss Yolanda responds, everyone that's watching on Instagram, we have a third person on this interview. However, you do not see her on Instagram, so you have to get on one of our other venues. I have put a link in the chat, so hopefully you can go back through the chat history so that you can hear her response to what it is that she thinks about Mr. Jeff Hood's comments here. All right, Miss Yolanda, what do you think?
I thought you both made really great points. I really did. Um, and I'm going to tell you from my perception, not from my experience as an officer. It's just what I believe is the reason these people, Mr. Jeff Hood wrote what he wrote. I think that the media intentionally paints the picture. Hey, Kit Kat, our mascot.
Yeah.
Yeah, there she is. She's our mascot. So, but I think the media does this intentionally because when did non-melanated people have a problem not protesting anything that they're interested in? We saw that on January 6th. We see fundraisers, we see scholarships, we see people protesting city hall and council meetings and things like that. So I don't believe him when he's well. I don't have any examples of him saying, other people saying they don't believe that this white homeless male does not deserve a protest because they think other people don't care. Because minorities, the majority of minorities, especially Black people, we care about everybody. If you look at the civil rights movement, we put everybody on our back and got rights for everybody. And we came out pretty much at the bottom of the totem pole when you look at the end of it. So it's even they say Asian lives matter. Black people are right there protesting with them. Hispanic people say their lives matter. We protest with them. We say women rights matter. We're all there. LBGTQ. I'm sorry, I always forget to get that wrong. But anyway, the gay, lesbian community, we're all about protesting and making sure everyone has their rights. So saying that nobody would believe that this man had rights and nobody would appreciate the protest, I don't believe that. However, I do believe that the media intentionally shows Black people in a certain way. They show us that our innocent blood can be spilled in the streets. We can cry out and nothing will be done about it. And so what they're doing is normalizing us to the fact that this is what's going to happen repeatedly. You can cry out right now. You can cry out 100 years ago, and it's going to continue unless everybody is on board saying that and you can say blue lives matter, you can say black lives matter, you can say white lives matter. The only pushback you get is when people say black lives matter. That's the only time you have a problem. They're like, oh yeah, but blue lives matter. Okay, but white lives matter. Asian lives matter. You say Asian lives matter, everybody like, yeah, Asian lives matter. Blue lives matter, yeah, blue lives matter. White lives matter. Okay, we believe you, we agree with you. Hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. And so I think this is done intentionally just to show that it's normal for our blood to be spilled through the streets, and it's normal for us to cry out, and it's normal for nothing to be done about it. So that's just my take on it. So
um, I like your take on it. I'm glad that you came on the show. I know that you did a lot of praying about it, but you have insight that is powerful. Because so what I hear you saying, because I'm a paraphraser, and is I'm thinking about the word dilute.
yes.
So, like for example, if you have, we're all around the same age, so we know Miss Keisha is a little bit younger, but we know when you used to make Kool-Aid and you put too much sugar in the Kool-Aid, and it would be like sugar coma type. And so you'd have to dilute the potency of it with more water. Okay.
Yeah.
So what I see when it comes to Black people saying, wait a minute, this is not fair. Wait a minute, that's unjust. We need to address this, that, or the other. They want to dilute the potency of the need within the Black community by saying, oh yeah, well, all lives matter. That's what I heard people say. We say Black lives matter. Well, all lives matter.
Yeah.
All lives are not experiencing what we're experiencing. So it's a question of what is happening at that moment, and how best to address the need for that particular group of people. So I like that.
One thing to add, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Jesus left the 99 to get the one sheep, and we're the one that needs the help right now when it comes to certain types of injustice in our communities. And I think it's been it's been ingested and digested and masticated over and over again, and we keep chewing on the same thing and getting the same results. And so it's so commonplace to us now that we if we don't change something and understand that this is one thing I understood when I lived overseas is it didn't matter who you were. If you saw an American, you were so happy to see an American who spoke English, and we were all glad to see each other. But here in our country, we intentionally separate ourselves. And so because we do that, we don't look at each other as Americans. And I'm so over it because at this time in our lives, we could be the most educated, the most humane, the most generous, the most educated, the, the most technology forward country in the world if we could only just get along. We were already number one superpower, but we're losing our grounds because we can't get on the same page. And
And to be honest with you, my personal opinion is that's strategic.
yeah, it is.
It, but we'll have that's a whole different that's a whole different show. I'm gonna invite you back on that one. But no, I agree with you. I agree with you. So let's see what else we have here. Mr. Hood goes on to say, until the assassination of white folks matters as much as the assassination of black folks, it is going to be hard to get white folks more involved in the wider movement. And that's where Yolanda's point she brought up, and I agree completely. Why do white people have to think that it's a that their culture is more involved in order for them to get involved in police brutality? And our example is Jesus left the 99 for the one. So to say, well, it's not affecting me, if we have to show that it's affecting you, then that in and of itself is the problem.
Well,
When
the
you
thing
think,
is, it does affect everybody.
well, I agree, but the fact that we would have to prove it. Do you see what I'm saying? It's kind of like, I mean, I'm thinking about how on the private group page we're talking about the public school system and the
Yeah,
issues within the public school system.
right,
Essentially, everyone is only interested in their kids.
right,
And then what happens with getting their kids? What's the best option to get my child
right.
the best educated for my child? I don't care about Johnny or Jackie or anyone else. So the fact that we have gotten into this place where we're, well, what works for me, that actual mindset is contrary to what Christ represents. So it has to be that we say, what would Jesus do? Well, Jesus wasn't about himself. Everything he did was about others. Miss Keisha, you got those eyes. Go ahead and say what you got to say.
Oh no, I mean, I guess I was just also going to point out how dangerous that mindset is. Like, um, I had a thing when I was going to school because uh, my parents used to say to me all the time, "Don't worry about what such and such do. I'm worried about what you do." And as I started raising my own kids, and social media started to become prevalent, I started to realize that I can't. That doesn't. It doesn't work that way. I can't just be worried about what my child do. I gotta be worried about what your child do. Because when your child bring that gun in their doggone book bag and shoot up the doggone school, me being worried about just my child, I should have been worried about your child. I should have been worried about your child when I saw him walking down the street, and I said to myself, that one look a little weird. I should have been worried about your child when we saw how you are allowing other people's children to be bullied. Same thing with police brutality. Only difference is you asking them again to give up their security system. They don't see the police like we see the police. We see the police for what they are to us. Now, for Mr. Richard Lee Richards or whatever his name was, again, isolated incidents, people, you're going to find random people that don't nobody agree with. You know what I mean? But at the same time, you not gonna get a whole race of people to turn against the one thing that they use against us. You have to understand they're afraid of us. So they what do? They call the police. Now the police are still them, still afraid of us, but somehow they got a badge and a gun. So it's like, well, I'm more prepared than y'all, so I'll go in front of y'all because at the very least I can shoot one of them. I mean, you're not gonna get a race of people to turn against their security blanket. And at the end of the day, the police are our opposition as people of color, and they are their security blanket against us. And until that is put into the forefront and attacked, we're going to stay at a divide because you got too many of them protecting them. You got to realize, like, that's their family members. No, they're not going to turn on the police when they got an uncle and a cousin and a brother that's on the police force. No, they're not going to turn on the police when they know all of the police because they go to church with them. And when they see a young black man running down the street jogging, they can call them on their cell phones and say, look, I see something weird. I need you to come check it out. And it escalates very easily, but it very seldomly escalates negatively towards them. And this man has pointed that out inadvertently. You want them to what? Protest against their. What's going to happen when they call the police the next time they see a black UPS driver coming to their house? Are they going to come if they are known to be protesting against the police? This is what their thoughts are. I need to be protected from these people. They're savages, and I have to live with them. And although most of the time I can live my life, just in case I run into a savage, I need to be able to call the police because the police need to take care of the savage. And I mean, I think that's something that needs to be conversated again about too. Is and I mean, it has slowly but surely the weaponization of the police with certain places putting into law that you can't just be willy-nilly calling the police for any doggone reason. And they still do it, you know what I mean? It still escalates sometimes. It still gets bad because there is no cultural education. You're going to throw two groups of people together and you're not going to tell them about each other. That's never going to go well because now they have to learn each other. Every culture has things about them that are different than another culture. You know, I like to tell people, y'all wash y'all cars and walk y'all dogs on Sunday mornings. Like we barbecue and had the kids running in the sprinkle. Two different things. Neither one of them is wrong. You know what I mean? But y'all are scared because you don't know. Why is it so loud over there? Why are they so loud? Why are they jumping around? Why is it so many of them? You know, learn our culture. That stuff wouldn't scare you. Those of y'all that actually, those other people, or I know other cultures who have come in and learned, just like me. I work in a Persian restaurant. I deal with Iranians and Middle Eastern people who come from the Middle East a lot. And when I first started working with them, it was going bad. It was going bad because I didn't understand them. I didn't understand the way they talked. I didn't understand. Even when they would get upset and they start speaking Farsi, it almost scares me. It's a very aggressive language. But until I realized that when that lady said, you'll go get me some water, she didn't mean it like Americans meant it. She meant it the best that she could speaking English, and she wanted to be confident when she said it. So when I came back with the water ready to throw it on her, and she looks at me and says, oh, you're so kind, you're so beautiful, thank you so much. I'm somewhere like, dang, I'm glad I ain't throw this water on you, my bad. Oh gosh, you're so sweet, I gave you what you wanted. I just needed to learn the culture though. And once I learned the culture, there was no more conflict. You know what I mean? And it's the same thing with learning the culture goes. That's how you kind of attack that racism thing. There are so many police, and it's like you would think you want to start with police maybe to get them to understand. Like, hey, you need to learn the culture. You know, we need to have some mixing and mingling into the neighborhood. You need to use you also need to use the people in the neighborhood to your advantage versus your disadvantage. Know who's in the neighborhood. Know who you can use. Don't just go in the neighborhood attacking everybody. But that's because, again, you're culturally unaware. So when you come into our neighborhood, you feel out of place, and naturally, you're scared. So what happens when one of us jumps the wrong way? You shoot. It only makes sense. It's the fear of not knowing. It's the fear of I don't know these people.
That's not true
And
of
I don't
every
know what
officer.
they're doing.
Go ahead, Yolanda.
What you say,
It's not true of every officer. I don't think I'm doing a good job of representing how much nonviolence takes place when officers go to situations, and how we have to, because you can answer 30 calls a day, all day, and you can go to work for months and months and never have a police shooting. So it's not like it's a common occurrence. It's not. And so, and we come into dangerous. I've been in plenty of fights. I've been in plenty of foot chases, and I done did traffic stops on people who had guns in the car. And so, I don't know if it's necessarily about learning our culture if you're just a decent person. And so, we claim to be a Christian nation. And my whole entire police career, I started off as a Christian, and then I stopped for a few years when I decided to research the Bible. And fortunately, I had a friend who decided, I had two friends who decided to pray for me and have discussions with me and continue to involve me in their lives once I decided to come outside of the church. And I railed against God for a long time. You can look at some of my old Facebook posts and you'd be like, how is she still on this show? Talk about she loves God, because I was angry. But I think people also, you don't understand that being a police officer doesn't make you a superhuman. It makes you, it's a scary job. It's not the most dangerous job, but I dealt with a lot of people with mental illness. I dealt with people who just like to fight. I dealt with people who just bossy people, like you said. And I would teach you, because you deal with people the same way. But when I come into when an officer comes into a situation, there's always at least one gun at the scene, and that's on your hip, and people will try to take it from you. So you just have to be aware of that. And so they had to sign a paper when I was coming out the police academy, and I had to sign to my husband that I would do everything I could to come home every night safely, whatever it took. He hung it on the refrigerator. I just thought it was a joke. He thought it was up there for like a year. He was like, "You coming home every night?" And so you kind of got to put yourself in a mindset that it's the police officer against whatever comes against our police department, against whatever's coming against us. That doesn't mean we have to be jerks about it. That doesn't mean we have to be overly aggressive with people all the time. But there are times and places for aggression. There are times and places for mace and batons and guns. And so the small amount of shootings that take place, and it doesn't seem like it because we see it on the news all the time because it's at the forefront all the time. However, it's a really small amount of shootings that happen compared to all the police departments in the country. And so, and it all
Um,
on where you are.
this is an interesting point because we have been using the example of shootings and
Yes.
deaths,
Yeah.
which is the most extreme example, and we have been defining police brutality by shootings and deaths. But I actually think police brutality is way more
It's true.
is than just whether or not you shoot someone and kill them.
Yeah.
Miss Keisha, you're shaking your head.
Yeah, because I agree. I mean, and I don't even know if I definitely, when I think of police brutality, the only reason we go straight to shootings is because that's the only thing that people are going to listen to. When I think of police brutality, I think of harassment and bullying and
Yeah.
authority misuse. I think of mistrust in my neighborhood. Again, I was going to ask Miss Yolanda, so we don't think that like she said, you're put into these positions, but if you're educated and you know everything that you possibly can know about what you're going into, I feel like you're going to look at it differently. Things could be thought about and or handled differently because, again, yeah, I talk about shootings and everything, and growing up, even between 4 different states, there were shootings in all those aspects my whole life. But the more the police brutality comes from the pulling overs, comes from the
Right.
stuff that's done on the streets and the abuse of power. That's the whole thing too. And it's funny because I don't know that I don't know if that's a race thing or if that's a power thing. I haven't figured that out because that goes back to you saying where people will use instances like, oh, I know a black police officer that did A, B, or C. You know what I mean? And I come back to that where when I was younger, I was like, the police don't have no race. They are the police. They're their own entity. You know what I mean? But then as I started to, grow and do research and stuff like that, and I started to, and even me and Miss Yolanda talked about this, it took me a minute to put a
Everyone,
face
this is my
towards them.
nephew. Christian, say hello to the world.
Hello.
Hi, nephew.
All right. Have a good day. Love
Okay.
you. All
Love
right.
you too.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
I should put a sign up on the door, you all. That's go ahead, Miss Keisha.
I like the cameos, but
Okay.
so yeah, so I mean, yeah, she made a great point as far as I do understand that they are put into a lot of situations, which is why I brought up cultural education because I feel like you need to know those cultural differences when you're in a whole area full of those people.
Well,
Well,
If they don't,
get cultural classes, but the police, we do get cultural classes on culture, but it's only like I think it's 8 hours on that type of thing, and then we do like refresher courses like every 2 years. We have like a academy thing that we go to again, and so I, I still I still don't know. Especially,
I
let's
mean,
come in.
I guess I would approach that the same way I would say when I talked earlier when I said people BS around racism. So it's like you'll say that y'all take that the police officers take a cultural education class, but you're talking about 8 hours, and I'm trying to think, like, is it real? Like, I want to take these culture. We want to give you these classes because we want you to know about the people you're working with, or is it a cultural education class? Like, you got to take this class because we can't certify you without it. So let's put together something
Well,
to say you did
I
it.
think that as we continue our conversations in a lot of areas, you will find that there are classes and trainings, whether we're talking about police brutality or taxes or the school system or you know abuses in tons of areas. People have our culture, the American culture, has gotten one where we just try to make it a box that we check off on an application. Yes, I took a such and such. So, I've passed the blah, blah, blah. Yes, I understand about blah, blah, blah. But the internal heart matter
Yes.
that needs to take place, that's the reason why I kind of appreciate. I'm waffling between the two perspectives that you all have because I kind of understand what Miss Yolanda's saying about just being a decent human being. Why do I have to understand everything about your culture before I am a decent human being that values you as another human being? Go
Amen.
ahead.
Because being a decent human being looks different in every culture. You know what I'm saying? Being a decent human being to white people is when you come to the restaurant, you sit down, you be quiet, you speak in a nice voice. It's not wrong or right. Now, being a decent human being to a group of young black professionals when they just got off of work, they are screaming and cackling and ha 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 and girl, his baby daddy did, and
That's
it
my
does not
culture is
make them
race, huh?
any less of a decent human being. However, one will look at the other and be like, how dare they? How dare they be
But
in
that is not
intolerant and acting?
but that is not an education issue. That's an arrogance issue. That's a pride issue. That's a that's
I mean, I
a
don't know that
I'm t-
I don't know that because again, we're saying not an education issue. But if we're taught two different ways, if you're taught, hey, when you go out, you relax and you have fun with your friends and you let loose, and then you're taught when you go out, You be respectful. You sit there. You be polite. You don't speak when you're talking to, and unless talking to. We're taught two different ways. So
When
if
it
people
comes to
don't
the
know,
when it comes to an officer, you can try to teach people ethics. You can teach an ethics class all day. You can give it to us every 2 years for the rest of our lives. But do they internalize the ethics training, or do they just act as if they're ethical? Because
right?
you see police officers get in trouble for things that are unethical that they shouldn't have done, even though they were taught ethics and they should know better. But they don't do it because they're not probably in whatever area of that part of their lives, they're not necessarily ethical, or they saw opportunity where they could get away with it. And so that's
I yeah.
that's not a necessarily something you can teach somebody to internalize. You can teach it to them all day, but is that going to be who they are, or are they just going to mirror it? It's pretty
And
much what.
I definitely am a proponent of trying to teach as a matter of fact, and this is a shameless plug for Foundation for Interethnic Restoration, FIRE. If there's anybody that's interested in looking up that organization, it's a really good one. And it helps with intercultural communications, learning about the differences between different cultures. I think that is extremely important, especially in a country that has so many different cultures. Okay.
Yeah.
But even though I personally am an advocate of learning intercultural communications, some people's basic culture, their culture is that no other culture matters. You
Yeah.
understand? It's not even an education issue, that
Right.
it is actually ingrained into their culture
Right.
that no other culture is worth or has the value of my culture. So so when we talk about education, because there's already a cultural aristocracy going on, then it becomes a, why should I have to learn from you now? And so now you're asking me to change my entire culture. Yes, it's warped, but it's in the foundation. I had a loved one that went through something recently in the legal system that very much upset me, and I'll just say that very much upset me. And I realized that we say innocent until proven guilty. That's the rules. Okay. But I realized in that situation, oh, he was guilty because of who he was. He had to prove his innocence. And, but that's not, but if I were to point that out to the people that had to deal with his situation, they would have said, oh no, but in America, people are innocent until proven guilty. Not in your mind. Who's the burden of proof here is on the black man. The
But
burden of proof is on the accused. Go ahead.
I think that goes back to the article that you just read that said that white people don't feel like the homeless dude would get he would get any recognition, that nobody wants to hear it because they're more interested in black people. And we said we keep showing over and over again that black people are this way, and they paint us repeatedly on the news in a certain character, and people internalize that even though they have no basis for it or foundation for it. And we got to understand that some of it's true, some of it's true as well, but not everybody is a thug. Not everybody um, did what they were said to do. And you can look at it, but you know what? It still goes to back to the church. Uh, Even though we know that anybody can be grafted in the church, we different churches have different views. They have different denominations. They have different congregations, and people will use their religion to forward a point and exclude other Christians, other people of the same faith. So if we can't get that right in the church, how can we get it right in society? And there doesn't appear to be anything that would make us want to change. That we like to fight, so we like to fight with each other. It's done intentionally. There is intentionally a stereotype put on our race, just like there's a stereotype put on brown people, red people, Asian people. It's always a stereotype on somebody. And
Well,
so instead of
Keisha made a comment, and I thought it was very accurate. She says black people are viewed as savages, and it's lazy savages, and so try so
Until one of them gets to know one of us, in which case then where it's that one's not a savage. You know what I'm saying? And it's like
well,
y'all
then
don't
you're an
get
exception to
the
the rule. They don't
connection,
change the
right?
rule.
They don't get the
You're just an
connection that
exception
it's
to
not
the
all
rule.
of
Yeah,
them,
yeah.
but
But
I think
again, that education also lets people know, like people like me, like what you just said when Miss Yolanda said, we're not all thugs. You know what I mean? I've said that to white people to, before. And then I said, we're not all thugs, just like y'all not all country bumpkins and incestuous. I mean, it's a stereotype. Some of y'all are, but and some of us are, and we're not denying that, and we're not even saying that this doesn't need to be fixed. We are saying that this needs to be fixed, just like y'all are saying, y'all areas need to be fixed. But what we are saying is, just like y'all know that y'all got some problems, we got some problems too.
but
It's the
our
same
problems
thing. It's just
fixed.
sometimes you got to know how to make them understand what you're saying. You know what I mean? Like, okay, your problem is your nephew that dresses in all black and trench coats in 80-degree weather. And my problem is my nephew that won't pull up his pants. And they both got the same issues. They're teenagers. And if you get over it, just like you can see that little Johnny's going through a phase when he wants to wear black everything at 90 degrees, we know that little Dante is going through a phase because he won't pull up his pants right now because he's only 14 years old. But until you can look at little Dante like you look at little Johnny, that's where we're having issues. Because you're looking at little Johnny like, oh, that little dude don't got his pants up and he gonna rob the store and he gonna shoot somebody. And soon as I call the police on little Johnny for walking down the street in a trench coat, y'all gonna be mad. But it's the same concept. And until you can make them understand, yo, we got little Johnnies too. We just call them something else, and they do they don't wear black makeup. But it's still the same problem. You have to make it relevant to the different cultures, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? And like you said, education and people who say, well, it is ingrained in them that it is only their culture. Okay, and that's fine. Those people should not want to work with the general public. Those people should not want to be police officers. You know what I mean? There are certain people for certain things. I'm not even saying it's wrong for you to feel that way. If that's your business, you can feel that way all you want to. Just don't do nothing to me. I, at the end of the day, I guess it's just, again, having to figure out how to weave together the understanding that I don't care if it looks different, it's the same thing. It's the exact same thing. And I learned that in the service industry. You know what I mean? Everybody, you can call things stereotypes all you want to. There are certain things that certain cultures, races of people, they all gonna do. I can prove it. If you come to work with me one good day, I can tell you what this one's gonna do, what this one's gonna do, and what that one's gonna do. That one right there, they gonna stick that silverware in that hot water because somewhere somebody told them that silverware wasn't clean, and you ain't gonna convince them otherwise. This one right here, they're going to eat their weight in bread, and they can. You know what I mean? Give them their bread because their culture eats a lot of bread. But you knowing the different ones and knowing this culture, and that's the love of God. It's the love of God is to know the differences
and
of
and
the people.
and that's
So
what
it's
who's
like
so
when I'm sorry,
no
keep going. Go
that
ahead.
no that's the point right there. And I is whosoever will is about people operating under the love of God. And
Yeah, the
whether
love of
you've
God
had a
says,
culture
I'm
class
gonna
or you
mess with
didn't have a
y'all.
culture
I'm gonna
class,
understand y'all. I'm gonna love
That,
y'all. I'm gonna love y'all so much that I want to understand you. You know what I
yeah.
mean? When I am serving, I care so much, because I used to be terrified to go to a black table. I cared so much that I used to say, you know what? No, no, y'all are not gonna scare me. I'm gonna figure this out. Until I got to the point that I get there and they be like, can I get some extra ranch? Here you go. It's right here. I'm ready for you. Oh, wow, you really got. Oh, and I also need some ketchup right here. I was ready for you because I know y'all like extra sauces, because I care. I cared about my job and my money, but I cared enough to learn, what is it that irritates me about this? interaction. When I have this interaction with this particular group of people, because I'm not perfect. There are groups of people that I had to really understand the love of God about. Groups where I had to be like, am I Christian? You know, but no, I'm not. I'm gonna figure this out, and I'm gonna figure out like, okay, it's not. You're not doing this to aggravate me. You're doing this because this is the how you think, and this is how you do things. And now I'm not upset with you anymore. I understand you, and I'm gonna handle you differently. I'm not gonna handle you like I handle them because you're different. And I mean, I think that's just it's important to know some of those overall, especially. I mean, and it's bad enough that we as humans are such multifaceted people in general. If we can help each other out by learning the big things that we have in common, you know what I mean? Just like I said, I've told plenty of white people the difference between Little Johnny and Dante. I've had to put it together and tell them, like, no, they're the same person, sweetheart. They're the exact same person. And people would be
Well,
like,
that's what the
no,
scriptures say, that there's nothing new under the sun.
nothing new under the sun. Nothing at all. You just have to
So
figure it out and have the love to find that compassion to figure it out so you can deal with humans.
I agree.
There's no
Well,
such thing as a blanket way.
before I close out, because we are over our time, Miss Yolanda, was there any final comments you wanted to share?
Oh, Miss Yolanda, I enjoyed you being here. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I hope she
I just
comes
had to
back,
say
and I
that.
hope I can talk her into getting on Instagram at the same time. I'm just glad I got her on StreamYard. So
Praise God. I do, but it'll take a whole other hour. But what I would like everybody to consider is a different perspective on what y'all said, because what you said was all true. However, I'd also like us to consider that what's our responsibility to our community and our image? Because, like I said, it'll take a whole other hour for me to go into it. But people look at us a certain way, and it's not going to change. And so, within our communities, we have to get on our feet. They say, "Pull yourself up by your bootstraps." Nobody gonna give us a bootstrap. So we have to understand that in our communities, well, first of all, in our country, men commit the majority of crimes. And so, and there's no fairness for black men in the justice system. It's just not going to be a part of it. However, we have to say, okay, we've been dealt this hand. How can we, as our community, get ourselves on our feet so we can be looked at in a respectable manner? We have to have our own banks. We have to have our own schools. We have to have our own communities. We have to have our own police, gated communities. And so I just want people to consider that, and then next time we come back, maybe we can go into a little bit more in depth in that.
well, because both of you know me, you know that I already agree 120% with what you're talking about. Whosoever Will is an advocacy group for Christians, but I am a part of another organization, Kwanzaa Gallery, which is about that very thing. We can spend a whole lifetime trying to get other people to appreciate, respect, give, whatever. How about we just make our own bootstraps?
Yeah.
Instead of trying to get someone to give, I don't have time for that anymore. But that is a conversation that should happen within the Black community itself. And I know for people who may be watching this, they may assume that this is a this is a whosoever will conversation about a Black issue. But whosoever will is for Black people, white people, Asians, and it doesn't matter where your culture is or where you come from. If you name the name of Jesus, then you're welcome to that group. However, the topic that we are talking about is one about police brutality and its effect on the Black community. It just so happens that everyone that's on here talking is a Black and female. But one of the things, and this is just a footnote for me to say, I had to get over wanting the appearance of, I need to make sure I have a white person on every show.
Right.
God will bring the person who's supposed to come versus me trying to, make things look a particular way. Which also goes back to the whole systemic racism. If we had three white women on this very thing talking about the exact same issue, we would not assume that there was, they're just talking about uh, stuff that has to do with them. They would think we're just discussing, an issue in this in community, but those are the systemic things that we have to deal with. But no, I agree with you completely, and that is the other project that I am working on is having that cultural conversation just amongst the African American culture, the Black culture. So, but I'm going to go ahead and close out. I want to skip. I enjoyed our conversation so much. So these are all the slides we didn't get to. Eventually, we'll get there, Miss Keisha. We've been dealing with the same slides for about 3 weeks now. But anyway,
And we'll
um,
continue, and we'll
yes, we
continue.
will continue with it. But this is for those people who are interested in finding out more about Whosoever Will. Whosoever Will is a Christian organization, it's a biblical advocacy and education group. And this is our website. And if you want to check us out before committing, and we're not asking for money, but you can look at the front page and get a little bit more information about us. And there's the front page. And then if you say you pray about it and you say, you know what, I want to engage in the conversation, then you would go to our private group, and ask to be a member there. And that's how you engage in our private conversations about public issues. And so that's how you can find out more about Whosoever Will. This is our calendar for the month of May. Twice a month, we have a Whosoever Will week where we talk about different social and political issues. Right now, in the month of May, we are talking about the public education system, which is just really fascinating. I'll just say that and leave it at that. The more I learn about it, the more I get. Part of me gets interested, the other part of me gets tired. So, so we're just finishing up one week, and we will be starting another one on the 22nd, if that's something that you're interested in doing. I have started a recap that will be live, and it will be on the front page. However, we have pillars with Whosoever Will, and we're going to have a recap on tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. This is a new thing that I've added to our itinerary of pillar number 9, and that's because we want to be able to make sure that we've covered all of the topics, and ideally we will have members that come on and comment about pillars and what they think. Whosoever Will is supposed to be a dialogue, more than one person, not a monologue, one person. So we're trying to make sure we include dialogue type of situations. So we will start doing recaps of the pillar of the week whenever we have a Whosoever Will week. And that will happen tomorrow. Hopefully, it shouldn't take too long, maybe 30 minutes, because I'll be on there by myself. So it'll be short and sweet. Then Thursday of this week, May 18th at 8 p.m., is our open town hall meeting on the Clubhouse app. This is where we listen to people who may not necessarily be Whosoever Will members. They may not necessarily be Christian, but that does not mean we don't care about what you think. Doesn't mean that you can't tell us what you think. And that's what this particular meeting is. It's an opportunity for us to come out of our echo chambers and look around us and see what's happening in the lives of other people. So we will be doing that again on May 18th on the Clubhouse app. You would look for WSW Advocacy Open and join there and tell us what you think about police brutality. That's where you would do that at. And then next Sunday, I will be on, the two of us. In other words, it'll just be me talking to the viewers on the me to we transition on the uncharted territory. This is where we, as Christians, try to take the beams out of our own eyes so that we can see the specks in other people. A lot of people spend a lot of time talking about what's wrong with everybody else. And this is where we look internally and see how we can be the best representations of Jesus Christ that we can be. And so that's what that show is about. And that'll be next Sunday. So if you all are interested in learning more about the me to we transition, you can join me. Same place, same channel. What I say, same bat time, same bat channel. So that's everything for that. And let me, Miss Yolanda, thank you so much for joining us. I hope I can talk you into doing some more stuff, but I'm grateful for whatever the Holy Ghost tells you to do in this. But we and Miss Keisha, Miss Keisha, I praise God for her because she really keeps me going and accountable. But we have a big road ahead of us. I hope that she is ready because she's going to be getting a whole lot of phone calls in the next week or so.
Okay,
As
let's
we get
do it.
started. As we get started on this podcast, so she just needs to get her beauty sleep because we're about to go to
Look,
work. And
you know it's
so,
just add water.
so,
Just
but
add
you
water.
will
All
be
you gotta do
seeing
is
a
say
podcast
something.
from Miss Keisha for Whosoever Will very soon on and it's called "You Might Be a Pharisee If,"
Oh,
and we're going to start out talking about before we start the podcast. Miss Keisha and I are going to do an in-depth teaching. We don't want to just start pointing our fingers at people without giving people an understanding. So we're going to do a teaching on what it means to be a Pharisee, a Sadducee, and a Pharisee, and this and how that is counterproductive to the finished works of Jesus. So we're going to make that clear, and then we're going to get it started on our show, our podcast show, and she will be at it, and I will be in the background. So she will have free reign to say as the
Lord.
Lord speaks her how to do. So anyway, so that is everything. Thank you all. Thank you, Miss Yolanda. Thank you, Miss Keisha. Thank you guys for coming. Again, I love you. I miss you, and it is good to see you. And we will see you. I will see you tomorrow. That's the next time I'll be on. But the next major show will be next Sunday. Okay. All right. You all take care. God bless. Bye bye.